Motorsport Radio.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Ray from the Kawasaki Racing Team.
Hi, this is Nick Hamilton.
Hi, I'm Jamie Chadwick.
Hey everyone, I'm Bradley Smith.
Hi, I'm Joanne Zacco.
Hi, I'm Bradley Wright.
Hi, I'm Seb Morris.
Hi, I'm Dan Linfoot from Honda Racing, British Superbike Team, and this is Motorsport Radio.
Monday Motorsport with Lester Forbes on Motorsport Radio.
Hi, it's Seb Ogier.
This is Manuel Maldonado.
Hi, I'm Ash Sutton.
Hi, I'm Michael O'Brien, and this is Motorsport Radio.
Hello and welcome. This is Monday Motorsport 2019. It's a brand new series. My name's Lester. Thank you very much for tuning in to this week. And it's the first show that we've done in a very, very, very long time. So welcome. On the show tonight, we're not going to be talking about bikes, as we sometimes do here on Motorsport Radio. It's all about the four-wheeled cars, their car things. And we'll be talking about Formula One, previewing the 2019 Australian Grand Prix, which is happening this weekend, Albert Park in Melbourne. And we'll be telling you all the latest news. Not that there has been much, because I think everyone's been just a bit chilled out on their way, but any pertinent news other than just a bit of social media bants we'll tell you as well. Any breaking news on tonight's show, because we are live as well, we'll bring that to you. Also, all the events that happened in IndyCar at the weekend, plus Formula E, which also happened at the weekend. And we'll be delving into those championships with our panel of experts this evening. And it's our Motorsport Radio website editor, Connor Jackson. Hello, good evening, Connor.
Hello, Lester. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Welcome to 2019, your first show of the year.
Indeed, it's good to be back, and it's an exciting season ahead of us. Obviously, we've had an interesting weekend this time out with Formula E and IndyCar, and as you say, we've got a big season ahead with Formula One starting up very, very soon.
And indeed, yes, Connor, and making her Motorsport Radio debut, first time ever. Please welcome Charlie Andrews. Hello, Charlie.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me on. This is really exciting.
So, Charlie, then, obviously people are going to know who you are, but for the few that don't, just tell us then, who are you and why are you on the show?
Oh, well, where do I
because you're a journalist, I should mention as well, and you write for many publications.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, my time is kind of spread between, including you guys, about 3 different sites. So I like to keep myself busy. I cover everything: bikes, 4 wheels, electric, power, anything with wheels on a track. I am going to be there. I'm going to be watching it. I'm going to be loving it. So yeah, obsession kind of really started with Formula One, but it's just expanded. So. Yeah.
As it did with, I think, most of us, to be honest.
Yeah.
Incidentally, by the way, because I always ask people, what year was it when you fell in love with F1?
Oh my God, I can tell you the year, the race, the person.
Yeah.
It was 2009, Jenson Button in that Brawn, singing "We Are the Champions." Hooked, absolutely hooked.
Fair enough. For myself, it was 96. I know I wasn't even born, right? And Connor Jackson, when was your first dalliance with Formula One, and how did you get hooked on it, and when and where were you?
I mean, I should point out, Lester, I was not actually born in 96, so there you go.
Yeah, neither was I.
But for me, it was 2004. I remember it very notably. My father told me to shut up and be quiet because I was being too noisy. As he was busy watching the racing, and I decided to watch with him and continue to watch with him for the next couple of weekends. And yeah, from then on, I've been hooked. Like Charlie says, I remember Mark Webber and the Jaguar back in the day, but it's really gone since then. And yeah, I think of what it is now, it must be 14 years.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
A while.
So yeah, we are taking your not requests, but we are taking your messages. It's not a radio station. Oh yeah, wait, it is actually. But yeah, any messages that you've got on tonight's show, then get them to us. It's at M Sport Radio on Twitter, Motorsport Radio on the Facebooks, and also we're on Twitch as well. Yeah. Twitch, that's right. So not many people know about that. It's a new thing, I suppose. Yeah, new. So yeah, if you happen to be on Twitch, give Motorsport Radio a follow, and if you're on there, maybe frustrated in between games of what do the kids play nowadays? The FIFA or whatever it is, or whatever.
Fortnite.
Yeah, that basically. So you can tune into us and watch the most recent shows back, and also we're on Spotify. Every single show that we publish is on Spotify, so you can literally take us with you wherever you go. You don't have to be in front of your laptop or even holding your phone in front of your face while you're driving. You can even take our shows with you, our audio shows, radio shows, podcasts, really, with you to various racetracks. Right, that is the main hello and welcome back to the show. Welcome everybody, and so the big news then in over the weekend, Formula E. The race in Hong Kong ended in controversy. Sam Bird took the flag, and sorry if this is a bit of a spoiler for you, but tough. Sam Bird took the checkered flag. There was an investigation, and because he had a bit of argy-bargy with Andre Lotterer, the then race leader, coming into the last lap. And he was deemed to have caused a collision with Lotterer, and Bird was given a 5-second penalty, which put him, well, not as the race winner. So it was Eduardo Mortara who got the race win for that. IndyCar as well, back again in 2019. That happened yesterday. It was the Grand Prix of St. Pete, or St. Petersburg, to give it its full title. And it was a win for Joseph Newgarden, winning for Penske, with Scott Dixon in second place and Will Power in third. And a big congratulations as well to Toby Sowery. I think a double podium in Indy Lights, his first Indy Lights weekend, and he kind of sprung it on everybody, really, almost last minute. I think he tweeted that he'd got a deal when he was already out there, because I'd found out on the Saturday just as it was streaming, and he almost won race number 1 in Indy Lights. He came second, and I think he came third in race number 2 on the Sunday. Sorry if that's not correct. I'll check again. Oh, it is. Good. And excellent. We're off to a good start. And other news, more closer to home as well, for club racing fans. MG Live's, the MG Car Club's MG Live traditional events held every year, usually at Silverstone, has now been cancelled because Silverstone's resurfacing their circuit after last year's total shambles in MotoGP and to a lesser extent Formula 1. So because that's being resurfaced round about the time when MG Live would have been happening, MG Live has now been cancelled, or postponed at least at Silverstone, and I'm told that the MG Car Club are already on the lookout for another suitable venue. And so was there any other big news that we missed? I think that happened over the weekend involving cars. I think we covered roughly most of it.
In terms of major series, then yes, although I'm sure we can mention in a few support series whenever we get the chance throughout the show.
Exactly, yeah, and I'll try and find the huge accident. I think it was USF 2000, where there was a car barrel rolled, flipped through the air, and somebody took a screenshot of an onboard with a Top Gun style other car, and I forgot the other guy's name, and he was literally almost over him, going over his head. And I'll try and find that picture for our visual radio listeners, and I'll certainly tweet about it on M Sport Radio as well. So the headlines there. As we delve into our first race weekend that happened, Formula E, it was the 50th anniversary race. 50 races already in Formula E. Can you believe it? And it's only, 5 years old?
Yes.
5 years, yes. Apparently, Charlie, there was a special anniversary dinner involving, everybody who's ever been involved, I think, over the weekend.
Yeah, there was. Well, it was actually focusing more on the people that have been involved in every single one of those 50 races, which I think is really good to kind of commend these guys. You know, a lot of people were quite skeptical when Formula E hit the calendar, when it hit the big time. You know, it's amazing now, and I think it's gained a lot more fans. But people were really, really skeptical. You know, they heard the news, they heard what it was going to be, and I think they struggled to kind of get their head around it initially to start with. So not only have they had 50 races, they've had 50 amazing races. You know, we're in our 5th season now. The cars are just, you know, they're just growing exponentially. The technology that's in there is too much for me to fathom. It's just incredible. And I think it's really important for this to be commemorated. You know, it's come out of nowhere, and it's really just going strength to strength at the moment. So yeah, it wasn't just drivers, it wasn't just you know, engineers, it was media personnel, it was anyone that's been there since day one was given the recognition that I think they really deserve. So yeah.
It is certainly interesting to kind of wrap your head around the fact that it was actually it's the championship's 50th race. Still seems kind of new to us, I suppose, compared to F1, which is like 60-odd plus years or something.
Yes, as you say, it's considering F1's coming up to its 1,000th race soon this year at China, it really does put things into perspective when you put it 1,000 against 50. But no, obviously, I should say Formula E started back at the end of 2014, running initially as a winter series. I could argue it's kind of moved away from its winter series roots a bit now, but it still runs over the 2 years, as it were. And it's really grown as not just obviously the primary electric championship, but some of the primary single-seater championships outside of Formula One. And it's really grown as from this outlier that I'm sure the FIA would have just promoted for a few seasons if it hadn't gone well, and maybe just faded away if the investment wasn't there. But it's really been very self-sustaining. Obviously, we've got all the manufacturers in this year. 8 out of the 10 teams are all individual manufacturers, which is something we don't really see in any other form of motorsport. Even the big World Endurance Championship, I believe there is still about 8 to 10 manufacturers in that, and that's got obviously multiple classes and many more cars. So the growth that we've seen from Formula E is spectacular.
Definitely is. And if you are yet to experience a real life Formula E race, I do definitely recommend it. You probably already know about this. It happened, I think, just over a week ago. But the big breaking news regarding British motorsport, anyway, is that Formula E is coming back to the UK, back to London, and it will be an indoor-outdoor race / drive-through race at the XL in London. So yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, no, I'm personally really excited about this. I was at in Battersea Park at the end of the 2015 season, and it was one of the most incredible races I've ever been to in my life. The accessibility that you get at Formula E is like nothing I've ever known before. You know, there was driver signings when they stayed way past the timings that they should have done. You know, they made the time to meet with everyone, chat with everybody. I was so close to the starting grid, I could almost touch the cars. It was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. It was brilliant. So the fact that it's coming back, I'm really excited about. I've been desperate for it to be back ever since they announced that it wasn't going to be on the calendar. And I think it's a really interesting track. You know, the fact that we've got that mix of indoor, outdoor, it's going to add a different dynamic. You know, Formula E like to be cutting edge. They like to be, at the forefront of doing things differently. And I think they have absolutely hit the nail on the head with this one. I think it's definitely going to add something that we've just not seen in the sport before. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it should be really interesting. I know a couple of people have been a bit concerned about the fact that it's half indoor, half outdoor, but I think it should be amazing.
Yeah, Connor?
It'll certainly make the track surface interesting. I know, obviously, there's calls to be had about the fact it's obviously being indoor-outdoors, being electric cars. It's not going to create that emission problem that you'd have from a traditional racing series. But also tyre wear and tyre grip and just how the track surface plays out. It's going to be very different if one area is soaked in rain as it probably will be in the UK, and the other one is completely dry. Or alternatively, if it's really sunny outside the shop, then you can have different track surfaces, different track temperatures, and could really make it interesting for the drivers.
There was an interesting article that I saw at the weekend, Connor, regarding what Sam Bird said with the, as we all know, Formula E is constantly compared to Formula One because it kind of like was formed in its shadow, sort of thing. But Sam Bird, over the weekend, I believe it was over the weekend anyway, or just before the weekend, basically saying that Formula E is in danger, well, F1 is in danger of being overtaken by Formula E. In an article in The Independent, on the Independent website that I saw, a quote from Sam says, "I think the Formula E isn't worried about Formula One, but the other way round," he says. "I think there is a little bit of concern that Formula E is getting the headlines, but Formula One isn't." He goes on to say that Formula E needs to continue to grow, get faster, improve its tech, and who knows what the future holds, said Mystic Meg. Sam Bird. But he's right, though, I suppose. It was always going to be, and they'd always sort of set their stall up by saying, yeah, we're different, we're not Formula One, even though we're kind of like, we're definitely aiming for that audience. And there's a more and more blurring of the lines now, I would say, between the two championships. And it can only, I suppose, get bigger. They've took the decisions this year, Formula E, to be streaming races live. It's live on the BBC. They're streaming in loads of different places. There's loads of highlights of it, and they've got Formula E radio as well. And they, in terms of accessibility, they're probably one of the world's best championships in terms of, can we watch this for free?
Yeah, and I really do think that sorry, Connor, I really do think that's where this kind of worry is coming from. I know as a fan that watches as much Formula E and Formula One as I can, it's definitely a lot easier to watch Formula E, so it's naturally a lot easier to be a fan of Formula E. I think just from its most basic point, I think that is where it is leaps and bounds ahead of Formula One. You know, you will always get the fans that will not support e-racing, whatever their reasons be. There will always be people that see that cannot fathom a world without Formula One. And I must admit, in my heart of hearts, I would love for there to be a place for both Formula E and Formula One to be that top flight alongside each other. But at the moment, I think Formula E is gaining, dare I say, a larger, younger fan base, because of this accessibility. You know, people like myself can't always afford Sky F1 subscriptions, and when you don't have every single race live on free to view TV, you naturally drift towards a sport that you can watch. And I think that's absolutely where, in my opinion, I think that's where this Sam Bird's quote makes complete sense. I think Formula One does have a lot to worry about in that respect. Absolutely. Yeah,
Connor?
I mean, in terms of the audience, as you say, Charlie, it's interesting. It's interesting to get the younger viewers in, and obviously Formula E is very notable for its success on social media. If you're anywhere connected with the racing, I think it's very hard to even miss Formula E videos or some of the spectacular graphics they put out for various events, and so it's always incredibly promoted, and there's a very big social media team behind that. In terms of TV, I mean, obviously we've had it on the BBC this weekend, but it's not always been that.
It has been a bit hit and miss, but
it has been a bit hit and miss.
I think we can allow them for being a new championship, and you know.
I mean, even in its worst times, it's been still available on Freeview. I know prior to the Hong Kong E-Prix, it was available on Quest for those in the UK, which, although obviously being perhaps quite an obscure Freeview channel, it's still free to air for television, unlike Formula One, which is obviously behind that paywall. But to compare it to other sports, I mean, the suggestion is obviously Formula E will take over Formula One as the #1 motorsport in time, but I don't think a paywall is necessarily the biggest reason against that. I mean, if you look at football, I know this is a horrible example for those who aren't interested, but you look at the Premier League. It's still the biggest league in the world, and that has been hidden behind a paywall for years now. Access for it has been very limited. Even going to
football was never a
stadiums.
niche sport, though. Sorry to
It
interrupt.
was never a niche sport, and that is the other question to look at: is can Formula E succeed because Formula One doesn't have the wide-ranging appeal of something like football or rugby? But even saying that, Formula One itself is a very big industry, and I think it would be unwise to suggest that Formula E in the next 5 years will automatically be the next big motorsport. In 20, 30 years, maybe I can see the tides turning. But there is enough money, there's enough investment, and there's enough older fan base that will pay that subscription for Formula One to remain the top motorsport for at least our generation.
We've had a couple of comments, folks. Thank you, by the way, if you are tuned in live to us on our first, I suppose, adventure online for Monday Motorsport here on Motorsport Radio. #trademarked. You can still get in touch with us. We are live, and as many Mondays as possible. I'm not going to say every single Monday just because it's not practical, but you can contact us when we are live, definitely, as did Macaulay Underwood, who says Dan Marr is my favourite presenter. Thank you for that, Macaulay. And
Obviously a friend of Dan's.
Dan Marr is also tuned in. Hello, good evening, Dan. He's hit back and says, something about Formula E, actually. He says, yet another fantastic race in Formula E at the weekend. Shame for Bird. In his opinion, Lotterer moved under the braking, moved under braking, much like what happened with Jev and PK at Mexico. Didn't actually know Dan knew or followed Formula. Should have had.
Yeah, I have opinions on this. Carry on.
But that's racing. He says, looking forward to the next round and extremely close in both championships. Looking forward to more. He says. Phil Kinch is also tuned in. Hello, good evening, Phil. He says, don't forget WRC. I didn't. I just didn't watch it. But I didn't forget. I just didn't watch it. I'm sorry, Phil. And I haven't also forgotten about Ollie's performance in WRC. Definitely not. But yeah, I'd be a bit of a fraud trying to talk about something that I didn't even see. So that's why we're not talking about it. He says anyway. Phil Kinch says that Evans is on the podium. In Mexico, a high rate of attrition, talking about WRC. And Nat Jarvis also tuned in. Hello, good evening, Nat, as well. Surprising that he had time to watch Formula E, given all the Moto GP stuff that he was probably tuned into. But anyway, Nat says Formula E hit the market right at the correct time. Yes, good point. And he also says that Formula E is honestly like touring car racing in single-seaters. Kind of is, I suppose. If you did see it, there was a lot of argy-bargy and banging about, which unfortunately led to Sam Bird losing the race win, unfortunately.
Yes.
Also, a big hello to Chris Shora, who's tuned in, and to Stuart Richards and Sandy Mitchell as well. Hello, good evening, Sandy. And to Georgina as well. Everybody who's tuned in, just want to say a big hello to you guys. So when is the next Formula E race? Let me have a quick look. That will be in a couple of weeks' time at the towards literally. I think it's in China in literally a couple of weeks' time.
23rd of March.
It is the 23rd of March, and then they go to the Italian Grand Prix. And the French Grand Prix, I keep having to sort of remind myself that we're like well into the season, and I forget every single year that Formula E starts in like July, August type thing. So by the time we get to a normal season traditional start, I should say, then Formula E is already halfway through, and they always have a round that clashes with the Autosport show, so I never end up watching that. yada, yada, yada. But anyway, yeah, so the next race is in a couple of weeks' time, the Chinese E-Prix, and then Italy, France, Monaco, Germany, Switzerland. And then to round out the season, 2 E-Prix in America. Charlie, which ones are you most looking forward to of the races coming up?
Dare I say, it's not going to be a fan favourite, but I'm very excited for Monaco.
Well, it's
just
Monaco,
because, well, exactly. It's because it's Monaco. I know that it will most likely be one of the most boring races of the year, unfortunately, dare I say. Sorry, Monaco fans. But no, I'm really excited for it. I think.
So why are you excited for one of the most boring circuit? Go on, explain.
Well, just because you've got it's just the clash of such a historic track that's got so many racing fans, so many fond memories, alongside these cutting edge electric cars. I just think it's going to be brilliant. Again, I'm really looking forward to it. And obviously, season finale in America will be great as well.
Yes, and Connor, any particular future remaining Formula E race or E-Prix that you're most looking forward to seeing?
I'd be interested to see racing back at Switzerland, obviously a country that's famously shut its doors to racing for many, many years since the Le Mans crash back in the 1950s. So it's great to see racing actually returning to those streets after all these decades. So a brand new generation finally getting into motorsport over there, hopefully.
I suppose we've not actually mentioned, and people will be, I suppose, listening, thinking, when are you actually going to talk about the controversies that happened in the race? I suppose we should actually get onto that. I didn't forget, honest.
I think we've been putting it off for as long as we can.
Teasing, that's what it's called in the industry, teasing, yeah. Standout performances from the Hong Kong E-Prix for you, Connor. I mean, to name a couple of names, not to put words into your mouth, but Roland had he actually led the race for a very short amount of time, I think. And yeah, didn't he take the lead into turn 1 straight away, almost immediately? And then all hell broke loose, and there was a pile-up as well. The track was blocked. It was Jean-Eric Verne, I think, who slammed into the barriers, having damage earlier, and then Verline mounted him, and D'Ambrosio, just an innocent victim, couldn't get out of the way. And then there was a safety car, and then Roland was seen to be slowing on the restart there was a red flag actually from that incident, but on the restart it was Roland who was slowing because allegedly he'd hit the full course yellow button. Don't know about that. But
I find this quite interesting, purely because if this is true, in my opinion, it's a little bit worrying. So essentially,
let's be honest, isn't that something that we'd all kind of like do and fumble around? I mean,
we're not professional racing drivers. This is what he's paid to do. It's a little bit worrying. I know. I'm so sorry. But essentially, what happened was Sam Bird went into the back of Oliver Rowland, and essentially what happened is the force made his hand slip, I'm not sure, and he hit the button to put the car into full course yellow mode. So obviously he went back so quickly and lost what could have been a race win. You know, he took that lead so quickly and so dominantly that, you know, there was no reason for him to lose that. I was quite excited to see him take a win. And then to make such a fumble like that, I mean, I'm sure, I don't need to say it, I'm sure he's feeling awful about it, but I've never... I
know you've just made him feel even worse there. Well done.
I know, I'm so sorry. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I've not witnessed that happen in a race before. It's quite... I think it's in quite Formula One, interesting...
Some people have accidentally put the pit lane limiter on in F1, I think, and that type of thing,
But from the lead though?
No.
I don't want to make him feel awful, because I've got a lot of respect for the guy. I think he's a really, really good racing driver, and naturally it's brilliant to see a Brit doing well. But that was the biggest of big fumbles, really, wasn't it?
Well, Georgina agrees with you. Georgina is still tuned in, and she says, "Yeah, I agree, Charlie. Very worrying indeed." Listen, guys, I think you might be making just a slightly bit too much out of it. I think he's just human, and if you've just been literally slammed up the rear, giggity, then of course the least worst thing that could happen is like your arms are going to be flailing all over the place, and you might accidentally just press a button or knock something. But it is what it is. I suppose maybe in future they could like have one of those flaps on the steering wheel that you literally lift up like sort of fighter pilot, like a big red button. I don't
know. I can't see it changing. At the end of the day, it is the first. Like I said, I think it's the first time I've known of something like this to happen from a person leading the race. I can't see technical buttons and amendments to the steering wheel, but I do think. I don't know, was it a loss of focus for a moment? His hand wasn't where it should have been, or I don't know, but I've never seen it happen before, hence why I think it's quite worrying.
And I'll continue anyway. There was other incidents in the race. The race kind of throughout the middle part anyway sort of settled down as people were managing their battery and their regen, etc. The boring part of the race, but then Stoffel Van Dorn stopped on track, and there was a safety car for debris, and then Roland stopped shortly after, and then a final safety car towards the end of the race, and on the last lap it was Sam Bird, if you didn't see it, who I think was just a bit too exuberant, trying to overtake Andre Lotterer, the then leader, coming into the final lap. It looked like he was going to win, although he was he was energy saving quite a lot. I think Bird had a bit more, like 1 or 2% more battery than Lotterer did at that point in time, and they made contact anyway. And we think Lotterer got a puncture from that, or he broke his suspension or something. Anyway, it caused him to sort of retire from the race, and we said earlier, it was Sam Bird who crossed the line, took the checkered flag in first place, and was on the podium, but the stewards decided that he would not take the actual win, unfortunately. Your thoughts on that, Connor?
Yes, as I think many people pointed out, 4 hours after the race to make a decision is a bit is a bit concerning for a series that prides itself on being obviously an FIA affiliated series, and we talked about it being a rival to Formula One. So taking that long to make a decision, it's not going to help it in any way. But the crash does bring a point that I did actually raise on Twitter a couple of days ago.
The Sam Bird one.
Yes, the Sam Bird incident in which he hit Roland, which is does consequence change the same action for different results, which is as I think was pointed out earlier about from Dan Maher's points about, I believe it was Nelson Piquet, he said, ramming into the back of someone else. The example I used was Lotterer himself hitting the back of hitting the back of his teammate Jean-Eric Vergne on the closing laps of the Santiago E-Prix last year. Ironically, same position going into a braking zone. Lotterer is much quicker coming behind, hits the back right corner of the car in front, but both in this situation continue on, and they both finish 1-2, their first 1-2 for Techeetah. So everyone was happy at the end of the day. But the difference being these Gen 2 cars don't have rear wheel guards, and as a result the contact Bird made was very serious and did punch the tyre. And so it was a question I was curious to bring up, which was should the stewards be punishing the action that drivers do or the consequence of the actions? Because if you're punishing certain moves, such as moving in the braking zone or accelerating during a safety car, we'll say, for example, then these are punishments for direct actions. But with racing incidents, you very often punish them based on the consequence that happens, i.e. two drivers collided, but both of them continued, nothing happens, so the stewards say nothing. But if two of them make contact and one of them careers into the barrier, then there is very much a discussion to be had. And so this does bring in an interesting question of, do we do we put more precedence then on how drivers drive the car, or do we put more precedence on the eventual result? I point out the new Gen 2 cars being very fragile at the back. Could this, and I know this is probably a worst case scenario, but could this create an incident where drivers purposefully block drivers behind them in the hope of creating a Sam Bird incident, and that the attacking driver behind punches their tyre in front, and so they can they pick up a penalty? I know it seems a ridiculous thing to say, why would you damage your own car in the hope of someone else getting a penalty?
Well, maybe in the championship last round type thing.
Exactly, and exactly, last round championship, last round, the last London race we had back in 2016, where Degrassi just straight up hit and rammed into the back of Sebastian Buemi. Was that an action that, was that a case of the consequence being valuable, or was that a case of Degrassi's straight up driving? Was that reason for the for any punishment? Because as far as I'm aware, very little punishment was given to Degrassi in the end. I think it was like a 30-second penalty or something ridiculous like that for what was an action that took both drivers out of the race.
So what would you like to see happen then? If so, okay, you are the race director, you're the race steward, Connor. In that incident that happened with Sam Bird, what would you have done different, or would you have done the same thing, or would you have beheaded him?
I mean, we do need to have the discussion about whether it's the action or the consequence that makes the decision, and that is something I think people would have to come to a consensus on. But in terms of the Bird incident, I would very much say it was a racing incident. Lotterer did move very late at the end of the braking zone. Bird didn't have a lot of space. There was no room on the inside of the track for him to go. So it's fair to say, I think, that this was just a tragic racing incident in which Lotterer found himself out of the race.
I mean, it's a really interesting point because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there were a lot of big moves in that race, a lot of which I'm under the impression weren't penalised. Like there were a lot of, shoving a car up the inside of the corner, for example. I believe Roland did that after he lost the lead. Lotterer himself did it as well when he took third place. There were a lot of big moves that didn't have the consequence, so didn't have a penalty. I mean, it's a really interesting point. It kind of seems like, according to what Connor's asking, they've kind of made that decision. There were moves that were that actually, from a spectator's point of view, looked more severe, but didn't have the consequence. So there was nothing done about it. I mean, correct me if I was wrong, and there were penalties, but I wasn't under the impression that there were.
I don't think there was any penalty other than Bird's one. Everything else was just considered a free pass.
And there were some really big moves. I know that there was, I believe it was Roland went up the inside of Daniel Abt. I mean, he took debris off the car. He didn't end Daniel Abt's race, but he took debris off the car. It was a move that made contact, and there was no penalty. And so it is a really valid point, actually.
I mean, the one final thing I'll bring up is with Robin Freins. I think some of us kind of forget is, Freins obviously finished third in that race, but there was an incident with about 10 laps to go in which he collided with Sebastian Buemi, and as a result, Buemi went on at the chicane, and I think eventual damage ended up with Buemi retiring. Now, this was something that we really didn't focus on in the race, but was an action that created a consequence, but nothing came of it because there seemed to be no focus on it. There was no reason to punish him because there was no protest from the Nissan team, in which case, fair point. But
and I guess it didn't change the podium either. So,
well, it might have down the line. Freins got third in the end, so Buemi could easily have had that position had contact not been made earlier in the race.
It is interesting, and we would love to get your opinions and thoughts on what kicked off in the Hong Kong E-Prix yesterday morning, I believe. Yes, it was. Yes. Let us know at M Sport Radio on Twitter, where we are streaming live this show, as we do all our shows here on Motorsport Radio. So if you're on your mobile device, you can just follow us and tune in live on the Twitters. It's Motorsport Radio on Facebook, again, where we're streaming live. So if you're out and about, you can take us with you and some such. We're also on Twitch as well, and most importantly, we are on motorsport.radio, our official website. Hello, good evening to Ryan Lilly, who joined the show very briefly. Tom Cairns as well, who commented, where else do you see Formula E heading to in the future? Question for us, I think. For potential races, London and Seoul already joining the calendar in Season 6. Yeah, completely forgotten about that. Hello to Steve Buckingham, Steve Buckingham, bike team owner as well. Hello, good evening, Steve. He probably realised what we were talking about and then tuned out because it's not about bikes, I suppose. And hello to Vince as well, Vince Petit, who from the Checkered Flag. Hello, good evening. Probably tuned in just to see if we are talking about WRC. Not tonight, sorry Vince, but you are more than welcome to come on future shows, yourself and Phil Kinch, to talk about WRC, as they, I understand, Connor, know quite a lot about WRC.
Indeed, both of them obviously I've worked with for quite some time with Checkered Flag, and respect both of them when it comes to rally racing.
Exactly, that's why I asked you, by the way. Formula E Championship, just to let you know if you didn't, it's Sam Bird who's still leading despite his penalty, the championship, by just 1 point. Super tight at the top at the moment. Sam Bird leading on 54 points. It's D'Ambrosio with 53 points and Lucas Di Grassi, and there's basically 2 points separating the top four as we go into the Chinese E-Prix in just less than 2 weeks' time. It's going to be fantastic. Check it out. It's definitely white hot, I would say, the interest in that championship at the moment. Right, this is Monday Motorsport on Motorsport Radio. Hello, good evening and welcome. My name is Lester, and we are live for the first time in 2019. How exciting.
Monday Motorsport with Lester Forbes on Motorsport Radio.
Hi, it's Seb Ogier.
This is Manuel Maldonado.
Hi, I'm Ash Sutton. Hi, I'm Michael O'Brien, and this is Motorsport Radio.
And we are going to be mentioning about IndyCar for the next few minutes, at least, anyway, here on the show, because it was the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. Yes, the annual start to the calendar, which is a usually short calendar in terms of compared to other championships like Formula 1 anyway. But that's just because we like Formula IndyCar. That's right. Hi. But yeah, it's been that long, to be honest. The season ended in 2018, I think, at the end of September, so literally half a year, almost, pretty much. But yeah, IndyCar happened at the weekend. Connor Jackson, did you manage to follow any of the IndyCar action?
I did. It was a fascinating race. Obviously, for anyone that did attempt to watch the race in the UK, there was a small
the satellite problems and stuff, but
there was a small cut in coverage, but I think we all got the gist of what happened towards the end of the race. It was a fascinating encounter, obviously, at the start of the year, and it very much came down to Penske versus Chip Ganassi for the win. Both of their drivers really impressing yesterday, but it was Joseph Newgarden who took the win ultimately. It was Newgarden's 11th win in his IndyCar career. Obviously, the 2017 champion is looking to regain his title after losing it last year, and it will be interesting to see whether he can keep that going for the season. Newgarden himself, though, wasn't the quickest on Saturday. He did lose out to Will Power, who took the pole position, and Will did shoot away from the line with rookie Felix Rosenqvist following him in second for much of the early stage. And it was the impressive showing from Rosenqvist in his first ever IndyCar race that really stood out from the crowd. Obviously, Rosenqvist himself being a experienced driver of not just Formula 3 championships, but has gone on, had raced Formula E, he's raced in I think he did one DTM race. I do apologise.
So.
He has done a multitude of races.
Bit of a journeyman, isn't he?
that I just cannot think of right now.
Too much to recall.
World Endurance Championship, I think he's done as well.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure there's plenty of Rosenqvist fans that can tell me where he's raced, because I'm just having a mind blank right now. But the point being, Rosenqvist obviously being a very talented driver, he was in contention for the lead for much of the early stages, and even took the lead after one of the restarts, after Hunter Ray's engine exploded, when lost power on the restart, and Rosenqvist did get past and took the lead up until the first run of pit stops, but it was traffic that ultimately decided the race. As Power was the first to pit, Rosenqvist responded immediately, and both got out behind the traffic of Spencer Pigot and Marco Andretti. And as a result, this really ruined their race. Newgarden and Dixon were both told to stay out, and as a result, that helped them. Newgarden really abusing the push to pass throughout his middle stint, and as a result of staying out an extra 5 laps, leapfrogged not just second place Power, but first place Rosenqvist as well. Rosenqvist himself fell all the way back down to 4th, and ultimately stayed there for the rest of the race, as it was Dixon and Newgarden who challenged it out for the win in the closing stages. While it was a fantastic result for Newgarden and the Team Penske team, it was bitter disappointment for the Chip Ganassi, who obviously had lost that win because of, well, it wasn't because of Rosenqvist, I should say, but had lost out of a chance of the win from Rosenqvist, and Dixon, the defending champion, failing to get on the back of Newgarden. He obviously lined up second. Power did manage to recover to finish third, and it was a good result from the Swede, nonetheless, because Rosenqvist apparently completed the race with one arm, as he claims. Yes. As he trapped a nerve for the last 40 laps, which, considering it's a 110-lap race, that's almost half the race, the race distance he did with just a single arm.
That's pretty impressive, to be honest. Yeah, this was. I mean, I didn't know about this at the time on the coverage. I read a bit about it, a couple of lines about it. I thought, what are they talking about? But yeah, definitely the. Driving with a trapped nerve for the last 40 laps.
And being a 110-lap race, that's pretty impressive.
That puts him in He-Man, Superman territory, I suppose. And coming home and bringing the car home in 4th place as well. I suppose narrowly missing out on the podium by less than 10 seconds. What was it? 1.8 seconds actually. So from Will Power. So he could have had a podium in the end with one arm and a trapped nerve. Yeah, I can't imagine it, to be honest. Talking about somewhat medical issues as well, as I was scrolling around on motorsport.com looking for the latest news not involving the race. Now those this is getting really in-depth for IndyCar fans. Some people might know that AJ Foyt is somewhat accident prone, having many incidents in the past. His latest of which was reported by David Malsher of Motorsport.com, and he apparently lost a shoe in his latest brush with death, the article says, as well as being attacked by bees twice in the past. AJ Foyt losing a shoe in an incident involving quicksand. He had to be rescued. So it's amazing how he's still alive, to be honest.
I think the fact he was involved with quicksand is perhaps bigger news than he lost a shoe.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's how it was reported anyway. But I just thought, it was a noteworthy thing to mention, perhaps. So AJ Foyt, stay with it and all that. Talking about as well, back to IndyCar as well. Robert Wickens, Charlie, was spotted back at a track for the first time since his accident.
Yeah, I must admit, I will be completely candid here. I'm not the biggest IndyCar fan. It's not been particularly accessible for me. But you cannot be a fan of any kind of motorsport and have not heard about this story. His recovery is just beyond belief. It was the most mammoth crash, and he has just gone on leaps and bounds. And to see him back beside a racetrack, albeit not in a car, but we'll give him his face. We'll give him his. Yeah, exactly. Is incredible. I know it really. One of the things that I know, obviously, Connor will be able to tell you more about, kind of the in-depth about his recovery. But the one of the things that really struck me was a video, I believe, on Valentine's Day of him and his partner, and he was up and out of his chair, and they had a little dance together, and it's just the most incredible story. I just think the day that, I want to say when, not if, the day we see him back in a racing car will just be insane. I can't wait for it.
It was really good to see Robert Wickens, as we say, back at a racetrack, albeit not specifically doing anything, but it's maybe an important milestone for him to at least be back in a paddock and meet some of the his old team members and some of the friends that he briefly made in his quite brief time racing in IndyCar. Robert Wickens.
I mean, the psychological effect of what he's gone through. So to even, be there, be surrounded, be in that atmosphere again, must have been. I can't imagine how tough it must have been. The psychological steps maybe can sometimes be a little bigger than the physical ones. So I think he's doing an incredible job.
Certainly. There was other news as well, apart from AJ Foyt losing a shoe in quicksand and being attacked by bees, and Felix Rosenqvist driving with one arm and a trapped nerve and just missing out on a podium, and Robert Wickens being back. There was not, I suppose, news as such, but there was an interesting line out that McLaren and Fernando Alonso back at the Indy 500 after 2 years since their first dalliance, and we were talking very briefly before the start of the show anyway about potentially why Alonso is coming back, and I'll ask that in just a second, so keep that thought under your hat for a second, guys. But it was announced, I believe, over the weekend. I can't remember if it was announced at the time when it was announced. But Carlin, the IndyCar team and hugely successful single-seater team, have said that they will be providing support and help, logistical and operational help as a partner to McLaren on their Indy 500 project, which sounds very much like, to me, it didn't sound, I mean, Trevor Carlin didn't come out and say that they will be running the team for them, but Carlin do already have a team in IndyCar, and they are running in IndyCar, and it sounds very much like, to me, that McLaren will get Carlin to almost run their team for them, Connor, without saying that.
I think you're simplifying it too much. McLaren do have a wealth of experience behind them, but I think operational and logistical help is basically them realizing that while they probably have enough engineers and track mechanics to look after the car during the weekend, they certainly don't have the contacts with an IndyCar to make any significant grounds. I know when Alonso did his Indy run 2 years ago, that was with the already existing outfits that existed. I think Andretti. Thank you. Sorry, I was going to say Chip Ganassi. It was with the Andretti lineups, and so this is a way for McLaren to keep their operations in house, but also have that IndyCar connection. Carlin, obviously being a British run team, will have that connections that McLaren will desire, and obviously they've been very successful in single-seaters. Carlin now moving up full-time now to IndyCar. They've got Charlie Kimball and Max Chilton, obviously a former F1 glory, driving for them. So they certainly do have the experience, and it'll be interesting to see how much they can help Alonso throughout the weekend. I'm sure there will be controversy if there is any particular incident of Chilton or Kimball moving out of the way, let's say, during the Indy 500 weekend, although I'm sure it won't go that far. I'm sure it won't go that far.
Do you think that will happen? Do you think that would actually, if they were in that situation, do you think they would actually have to move them out of the way?
I mean, I could argue Alonso is such a big name, any driver would move out of the way, but that's a different answer altogether.
It happens in Formula One, though. I mean, Sauber, when they're in a better race position, which Ferrari, for example, in the past, and it's happened many times in the past, notably with Sergio Perez. Do you remember? I think it was China or Malaysia or somewhere a couple of years ago, where he was going for like second place or something, or a podium position, and he.
I think I know the race you're thinking about, and that was before the Sauber partnership with Ferrari, and also
had
Perez.
Partnerships going back decades.
Yeah, but
Ferrari.
This was back when Sauber were running the Cosworth engine, or Mercedes engines, I think. I do apologise.
I mean, also is the issue here not the fact that obviously in Formula One these were all permanent racing drivers, whereas Alonso, again, correct me if I'm wrong, is only doing Indy 500. If you move a permanent racing driver out of the way for a one-off, yes, okay, superstar, but I mean that could cause a lot of issues. I'm surprised that that's a thing.
Well, the World Endurance Championship in cars, anyway. They literally, I think, I'm gonna say, give them the benefit of the doubt, and. I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say they actually moved a championship event just so Alonso could race in it.
Oh, yes, they did. Yes. Yeah.
They might deny that, but I'm going to say that's what happened.
Well, considering the move basically meant they ran on the same weekend as the Petit Le Mans, which like a quarter of the WEC grid actually compete in as well, which obviously didn't go down well with pretty much everyone else on the grid, then... Yeah, Alonso's name, let's say, has far more power outside of just the F1 circles. And as I said, I'm trying not to say anyone would do anything specific during the Indy 500 because I really don't think it would go that far. But I wouldn't be surprised if there is some assistance from the Carlin team, maybe during qualifying to give him a better slingshot. I could easily see Carlin giving, say, Alonso a tow for a qualifying lap. That's something reasonable I can consider. And that sort of action would definitely be passed by, I think, most people. Most people wouldn't mind too much. If it was a last lap incident in which they specifically moved out of the way, then yes, there would definitely be uproar, let's say. But small things like helping qualifying, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that.
Okay.
I just find the Alonso effect. Sorry, Lester. I just find the Alonso effect on motorsport just quite mind-boggling. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm an Alonso fan. No, I am a big fan of Alonso. But people go nuts over the guy, like absolutely nuts. Like you said, they move races for him. They move their own drivers out of the way for him.
I don't know if they actually did that.
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember it happening, and I just find the effect, and obviously I know you wanted to jump back to kind of him being at testing and so on, but just the effect that he has just by being present is quite crazy. I just find it really interesting, and don't get me wrong, I am a fan, but sometimes even I have to sit back and go, come on guys, it's been a while since he won his championship now.
A long while, yeah. I don't think I was even born. I was. Yeah, go on, Connor.
Well, as Charlie knows, she's been active in motorsport for a shorter amount of time than Alonso has between winning his last championship.
Yeah, it's just crazy. It's crazy.
All right then. The IndyCar Grand Prix of St. Pete happened, and it was, as we said, Joseph Newgarden who was the victor in that, and Scott Dixon coming home in second place, and Will Power in third. Felix Rosenqvist with a trapped nerve, and that's to be honest, I'd just park it up if that had happened to me. Narrowly missing out on a podium position by less than 2 seconds, and the highest placed Brit was let me have a quick look down the order. Jack Harvey, 10th place, doing a fantastic job. His first race of 2019, and also Tony Kanaan. And coming home just, I think he was involved in an interesting battle with Carlin's Max Chilton, which I remember watching briefly. But final thoughts then on what happened at the weekend in IndyCar, Connor.
I will point out some performances outside the top four then. Fifth place, Rossi was the only driver, it appeared to seem, that was the only driver that appeared to challenge the top four at all. He was sort of really right on the back of them during the first stint, but dropped back later on. He'll be a little disappointed with that, but a solid fifth place for him. Elsewhere, it was really interesting to see some of the rookies come out of their shell. So we talked about Rosenqvist being spectacular, but Colton Herta, in what is only a second ever IndyCar race, was in line to be in the top 6 in qualifying, but had his fastest time disallowed, which meant he started 11th. But even then, he managed to recover quite quickly throughout the race, took some early pit stops, stayed out of trouble, and ended up finishing 7th, I believe. 7th or 8th, I think, actually 8th, because he was ahead of Santino Ferrucci, the incredibly controversial American who famously got booted out of Formula 2 last year for a variety of incidents, let's say.
Didn't he have an incident with Arjun Mayani? Was that him?
He did, yes. There was there was rumoured to be anguish between the Ferrucci family and the Marni family around the Trident team.
Not that you're going raking all that stuff up again.
No, but it is worth noting that he's effectively left behind his career in Europe, his Haas F1 test deal, all of that. He's left it behind.
Don't think he had a choice, to be honest.
Well, yes, true. To go to the United States. And what was notable for Ferrucci, he started on the back row of the grid, yet managed to work his way up to 9th. Pretty out of the way of the cameras. So
he is talented.
So perhaps a redemption, as you say, for Ferrucci. So well done for the two rookies there. And as you say, Jack Harvey ran a perhaps a little bit an anonymous race, but still managed to pick up a 10th place and was running as high as 6th during the early stages. So he definitely had the pace.
Love to get him on the show in a future show here on Monday Motorsport. The next IndyCar round is you've only got a very short amount of time to wait. It's in 2 weeks, I believe, on the 24th of March. That's at the Circuit of the Americas, and there's the season ends once again in September, unfortunately, at Laguna Seca. A very, very, very short season in terms of months, calendar months, but not short in terms of action. IndyCar back on people's screens once again. By the way, we were going to mention this earlier, I'll mention it now. Back on Sky Sports, and it's on Sky Sports F1, and it's an ongoing topic, I think, that we're mentioning this week on our shows here on Monday Motorsport and on the Superbike show on Thursday. It's about accessibility, TV, and how you can easily, cheaply watch motorsport. For many people, it's become available again to watch IndyCar now that it has gone back on Sky. Some people preferred it maybe on BT, and let us know your thoughts. I'm not going to say either way, to be honest. I to be perfectly honest, I didn't watch most of last year's IndyCar because I was busy doing bike stuff, and for me it was literally a fresh start in 2019. I'm going to try and focus on IndyCar, small amount of single seaters, and all the bike stuff as well. But for you, maybe Charlie, does perhaps IndyCar being back on Sky make it more accessible for you if you were to want to watch it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, a little bit hypocritical on my part because I was talking earlier about Sky Sports F1 maybe not being accessible to some people, but I think
it costs
BT
money.
Sport.
So.
Well, yeah, but BT Sport even less so. I think there's more lure to Sky, maybe, dare I say? But yeah, it will definitely give me the opportunity to tune in a little bit more and start kind of exploring a series that so far I've had very little experience of. So I'm excited.
Connor, does it change your viewing habits now that IndyCar is back on Sky?
Means I have to go find people who have Sky.
I see.
I have Sky.
I'm sure the trek will be most enjoyable.
So, are you one of those people then who are posting on online asking for where you can find a stream to XYZ Championship?
I'm not saying, because
people do it, whatever. Big hello to Rich Danby, tuned in, listening live to the show. Hello, good evening, Rich, and to Andy Lloyd as well, motorsport radio journalist, and also a journalist in his own right for his own website, Endurance and GT Racing. And a big hello to Steve Andrews, tuned in, who mentioned that he loved hearing about AJ Foyt's exploits. And Steve has fond memories of his grandfather. What does he say? I should have read this before reading it out. Steve Andrews loved hearing AJ Foyt's name being mentioned. His grandfather raced when I watched Indy back in the day. Steve said. Sorry, Steve, I butchered your message up, sorry. But yeah, you can get your message into us. We are live on a Monday night tonight. And this is Monday Motorsport, talking about cars and stuff. And we will move on, unless there's any other business that I forgot to mention.
USF 2000 crash.
Yeah, I mentioned that.
Sure we did, Lester.
Yeah, we did, briefly. I mentioned that it went over the guy's head, but I don't have the picture just yet, so yeah. I want to give another big shout out to Toby Sowery as well for getting at least one podium in Indy Lights as well at the weekend. Well done to you. Right, so Formula One next.
Monday Motorsport with Lester Forbes on Motorsport Radio.
Hi, it's Seb Ogier.
This is Manuel Maldonado.
Hi, I'm Ash Sutton.
Hello, my name is Tiff Diddell, and this is Motorsport Radio on television. I don't understand that at all.
Hey! Hello. And we're talking about Formula One right now here on Monday Motorsport on Motorsport Radio. And you can go back and tune into all our live shows that we do on Motorsport Radio at motorsport.radio, of all places. You can keep up to date with when we are live streaming. It's at M-Sport Radio on Twitter. It's Motorsport Radio on Facebook. And we have our esteemed panel of guests this evening. Please welcome to Motorsport Radio, Charlie Andrews, motorsport journalist. Hello, good evening once again. Yes, hello.
Hi, sorry.
That's okay. And Connor Jackson as well, who's our motorsport.radio website chief editor. Connor.
Yes, come to me for your complaints. But no, pleasure to be on, Lester. Pleasure to be on.
Excellent. All right. So when we are live, by the way, like I said, you can get your comments to us here in the studio, and I'll read them out, especially if you chip in with a nice, good comment, I suppose. And I might even read them out even if you don't comment, just to maybe let everybody know that you said something. But yes, Formula One is the big event happening this week. And back again, 2019. And is it just me, guys? And it might just be me, which is why I'm asking. But is the start of 2019 not as exciting as for you as it maybe has been in previous years, Charlie?
Yes and no. I always struggle with testing because testing can tell you such lies. You can get so excited about a particular team's pace in testing, and then when the lights go out on that first race, anything can happen. But there are definitely a couple of elements to this season that I am incredibly excited about. Mainly team pairings this year. Actually, I love the personality side of Formula One, and one of the things I'm quite looking forward to is two teams in particular. One for some entertainment, one for some drama. I think particularly on the entertainment side, Renault with Daniel Ricciardo and Nico Hülkenberg is going to be a fantastic pairing. I think they've got two phenomenal drivers in that team. Some very old heads on some very young shoulders. So I'm incredibly excited to see what they can do. From the drama side of things, I'm very looking forward to seeing the Red Bull boys together, Pierre Gasly and Max Verstappen. I think we're going to have some interesting times with those two very young, very fiery bulls, pardon the pun, in the same team together. I think there's definitely elements of this year that I am very excited about. I think it's probably in kind of for my excitement side of things, I think it's the biggest kind of shift up we've had on the grid in quite a long time, more so for an unexpected side of things. I know you've probably talked about this in previous episodes, but we had driver changes that seemed to come out of absolutely nowhere, not just for us, but even for the team principal of Red Bull, by the sounds of it, just came out of nowhere. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what some of these boys can do. Obviously, like I said, testing can be a little bit misleading sometimes, but we definitely had the usual suspects on top in the second week of testing. We obviously had Ferrari.
Did you follow all of testing? Because I must admit, I didn't, to be honest, because I thought it was largely irrelevant.
Yeah, I followed highlights and I kept up with a few stats, but obviously the leading stories we have are, we obviously had the usual suspects on top. According to Pirelli, Ferrari have the edge going into the first race of the season. They seem to be on slower tyres that they now think, with the time estimates, will put them at the front of the grid. Whether that is the case, we will have to find out. I don't know if I always trust what Pirelli say, but we will see. And obviously, for me, one of the saddest stories I think from testing came from Williams. Obviously, they really, really struggled. They missed the entirety of day one and day two, and I think from kind of a fan side of things, Williams are the team that everybody wants to see succeed. They've got such a history. They are they are British motorsport. They are the one that we all want to see succeed, and they missed the entirety of the first 2 days. So I'm a bit worried to see what they'll be like in Australia.
Same question to you, Connor. Are you more or less excited now at this part of the pre-season than you have been previously?
I'm more excited by the potential of a shake-up at the front, as opposed to previous seasons where it looked like Mercedes did very much still have an advantage. As Pirelli and a number of other sources, let's say, have said, Ferrari do look like they have the edge. How big that edge is obviously up to debate, although I remember I was reading the Autosport magazine this week, and it did suggest it was up to half a second, but up to being the optimum word here. Saying that, it can all change obviously for the first round, as they were saying. Last year, Mercedes left testing with a 0.2 advantage, and by the time we arrived in Australia, there was a very notable on-track battle between Hamilton and Vettel, in which Vettel, I believe, even came out on top for the Australian Grand Prix last year. So to say that Mercedes are out of it is certainly going to be a bold and brash move to suggest such a thing.
Absolutely.
But the biggest intrigue I'm looking forward to is Charles Leclerc.
Yes.
He's obviously making the step up to Ferrari this year, and it's interesting to see how he can go. Raikkonen outperformed Bottas last year in the Ferrari to the Mercedes, and obviously there will be pressure if Vettel is very much fighting for this championship for Leclerc to help win the Constructors' title for Ferrari. But I am obviously talking about Leclerc being a number 2 driver, and the times from testing suggest that he was very much on top of the car, as was testing, Sebastian. Though. It was, and
are you actually suggesting that Ferrari at this early stage will have an equal driver policy?
No, certainly not. Ferrari have even come out and admitted. They've come out and admitted that for the first 6 races of the year, Vettel will be basically considered the number 1 driver. What will be interesting is if Leclerc can keep up with Vettel during those 6 races, because even if he's, say, half a second off the pace, come the middle of the season, he could very much be on the back of Sebastian's tail, and a few mistakes here and there from both Lewis and Sebastian could very easily bring Leclerc into the title fight. Then again, I say that, and I remember talking about this back when Bottas was promoted to Mercedes, when he was the young up and coming talent. I remember everyone hyping Bottas as the next world champion.
Yeah.
Now look how times have changed. Bottas did finish 3rd in his first race for Mercedes, behind Vettel and Hamilton, and because he was only under half a second away. I remember reading an entire Autosport article about how Bottas was actually the secret third weapon when it came to the championship that year, and the fact that he didn't perform in that first year and he's continued to not perform and in fact arguably go backwards compared to Hamilton is very notable. And I would not like to see Leclerc's potential in his career thwarted by a dominant Vettel who perhaps may be coming towards the end of his own peak.
Okay.
I think Bottas, for me, in recent years of F1 has been the biggest disappointment I think I've witnessed, and that might be quite a strong statement. I know he does have a lot of adoring fans out there, so apologies. But like Connor said, he was hyped beyond belief. You know, this was going to be.
Fault, I mean, he didn't hype himself. We hyped him. So if anything,
it's your fault, Lester.
So if anything, aren't we responsible for overhyping it? Aren't we saying that we got it wrong about Bottas?
But hype has to come from somewhere. You don't find
the marketing department.
But you don't find just anyone. You have to have the stats and the performance behind it to support that hype. And he's been one of the biggest disappointments. And I genuinely think that this year is an incredibly telling year for Bottas. Like Connor was saying, I think Leclerc could come out and smash it out the park. And I think Bottas has a lot to worry about this year. If he's not on it with Lewis Hamilton, I think he's out. I really do think he's out. This is a really telling year for Bottas.
It's let's say there's concerns. Let's be nice and say that there are ongoing concerns.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I don't want to say that his job is on the line, but
you just did.
Yeah.
Well, you've got to be honest, I suppose, when it comes down to it. And he will know better than anybody, I suppose. You know, you've got to beat, at least, first of all, your teammate in Formula One. That's the first marker. And, that was a total fail. In fact, I think the only two people, I think this is a stat. Okay, I'm going to go with this.
Okay.
My brain says, okay, that's okay. I'm filtering as I'm speaking. The only two drivers to have beaten Lewis Hamilton in a team, in the same team, have been Jenson Button and Nico Rosberg. So
yes,
and those were his, both world champions.
I mean,
I think you've literally got to be the world champion to beat Lewis Hamilton.
In Button's case, it was a case of the car really wasn't performing that year for Lewis. I remember he finished. The McLarens themselves struggled, but no, as you say, you have got to be the world champion to beat Lewis, and perhaps that just shows how much of a once in a generation talent Lewis is, and we really shouldn't be criticising Bottas that much. But
we do.
I think Bottas's biggest rival this year won't be Hamilton; it will be Leclerc. And
absolutely, yeah.
And if he can't get on top of him, then, as we say, heads will roll, as they say. But in terms of who gets replaced, obviously Ocon's very much on the line, obviously being the Mercedes test driver. But we talked earlier about Williams being having a terrible start to the year. But if Russell can get on top of Kubica for the first year. Kubica's obviously a very experienced driver, someone who's won a Grand Prix in the past. Could we be seeing George promoted sooner than expected? After all, if Leclerc performs, maybe Mercedes will go, well, we should try it on our own young hotshot.
I think to be honest,
it's the way to go.
Go on, Charlie.
Go on, Charlie.
No, I do think it's the way to go. I think at the moment teams are waiting too long to put these drivers in a top flight seat, and I think they're losing them for it. I mean, you look at the jumping back. Obviously, I know I've got a little bit of favouritism for Formula E, but you look at the amount of people in Formula E that never made it in Formula One because they weren't given the right seat at the right time. I think these top flight teams, absolutely. I think these top flight teams are waiting too long to put guys in the hot seat, essentially, and they're losing out because of it. So I think Ferrari have taken a very good strategy with Leclerc. I think Red Bull have taken a very good strategy with Gasly. I know Horner came out and said he maybe would have liked him to have had another year in that Red Bull, but I disagree. I think he needs to be there now. But yeah, we'll have to see.
Interesting. That you mentioned, I just want to go back and pick up on something that you mentioned, Connor, regarding Kubica. Now, with Kubica, I first of all said many years ago on various social media platforms that he would never get back into Formula One. I was wrong about that. And it's
I'm so pleased you were wrong. I'm so pleased you were wrong.
I mean, Connor will know that I'm often right about certain things, and to ever admit that I'm wrong is quite a big momentous occasion. So I was wrong about Kubica ever getting back into Formula One, but is he good enough? Because I get the sense that the same sort of overhyping is going on with Kubica. And this, I do like Kubica, actually. I do like his fighting spirit and his general racing attitude. But I get the feeling overall, and sometimes this happened with Alonso the past few years of his F1 career as well, that he was just being a bit too overhyped, and it was all like, yay, Alonso in his case. And this might just be a bit too, yay, Kubica's back, yay, and this year it'll be, yay, oh, he's at the back of the grid, and he should have probably stayed away, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the hype around Kubica, and I'm.
Do you remember when Honda came back, and they came back with McLaren, and everyone was like, "Yay, McLaren, Honda! It's going to be Senna again, Senna!" And then back of the grid.
Yes, as I said, I'm very happy that he's back in the sense of it's good to see someone of his caliber on the grid. But I will say, I think someone who's stayed away from the top level of motorsport for that long will struggle to find his feet. Even if we take Michael Schumacher as perhaps a comparable example, his years away from Ferrari and racing did ultimately take a knock on his edge. When he came back to Mercedes, he wasn't immediately on the pace, and that pace really didn't materialize, let's say, for the 3 seasons he was there. There is stats to say that in the final year in 2012 he outperformed Rosberg in the second half of the year, but to point to that and be like, oh, that means he would have been a world champion, I think is a bit far-fetched.
So are we overhyping him? I mean,
I believe so, and I'm sure Charlie will disagree with me. But it's nice to see Kubica back, and if he has this one season, that'd be fantastic. But he is certainly not a long-term solution for the Williams team, nor do I think he will ever be up the front getting podiums again.
No, I don't actually totally disagree with you. But I do have the opinion of the fact that he is going to be in that car in Australia is a victory enough. You consider what that guy has been through. It's a victory enough that he is on the grid. There was actually quite an interesting quote by Kubica at the end of the week 2 of testing, when he stated that he knows 20%, he feels he knows 20% of what he should know before he goes racing in Australia. And I think that's a really interesting statement. I think he is more aware than anyone as to the challenge that he is about to face. But like I said, from a fan's point of view, I'm thrilled that he's back. I want him to do well, but then I always want Williams to do well because, you know, they're British motorsport, like I said earlier.
Of course.
I want him to do well, but I am very aware that it's very unlikely.
Yeah, certainly. There's been a couple of comments come in while we've been talking amongst ourselves. So rude. Hello to Andy Lloyd, who says, nice graphics. Thank you, Andy. He says he was fascinated to watch Stroll's progress, as well as Williams clawing its way back from the disaster that was testing. And also as well, Tom Cairns been back in touch. Hello, still tuned in. Well done. Tom says, to back up Charlie's point from earlier, Bottas has won only 3 races in the championship winning car in 41 out of 41 races for Mercedes. He also became the first driver within that team to go through an entire season without winning since Schumacher in 2012. And he also backs up,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, neither did I as well. He also claims that my claim, that my stat that I pulled out of my brain earlier, he says, yes, you're spot on with that. Jenson Button and Nico Rosberg are the only people to beat Lewis Hamilton in the same car ever in a championship.
Wow. I mean, when you think about that, we do not give Lewis Hamilton enough credit, do we? He's got some real haters out there, and I do think that when you put it into context like that, he is phenomenal.
Yeah, definitely. It was one of the reasons that tipped me off to Alonso's overhyped image, I suppose, because yes, you could cut it, an argument and argue a minute point about yada yada yada. If so and so hadn't spun in Brazil or whatever, or this wouldn't happen there, then it would have all been different. And if so and so, and you can say that about any driver in any championship, in any year, going back to I suppose where it all kind of like started with these conspiracy theories about what would have happened next. Back to like Senna in '94. If he hadn't have died, then of course he would have won the championship that year, definitely. No, but anyway, that beside the point. I know. Well,
indeed, Lester.
What's that? The internet. The internet is arguing with me now. But yeah. Anyway, what was we talking about? Overhyped drivers, I think, generally speaking. But
I mean, I will defend Alonso as the conspiracy theorist I am, but by saying that he's very much made a name for himself against Vettel as the driver who outperformed his car quite a lot, especially in that Ferrari throughout the early 2010s. There certainly was nothing wrong with that Ferrari, but it was not on the Red Bull's pace, and the fact he managed to keep up with Vettel for 2-3 championships was incredible, really. And I'd be interested to see Hamilton go through that progression, because the only time we've really seen that with Hamilton not in a championship winning car but in a position to win the championship was 2010, and he ended that year fourth in what was a very close year with Vettel, Alonso, Webber and himself all going into the final round with a chance. So it will be interesting, I think, to see Hamilton perhaps in a car that really isn't dominant. And perhaps we can see that this year. Testing has proven that Ferrari might be the quickest, and if that is the case, this might really be the opportunity for Hamilton to prove that it was not just the dominant car that's given him all of the success he's had.
Yeah, I mean, that thing about Alonso going back to the early part of the decade when he outperformed the Ferrari and he was nobly, trying to claw back, championship points. Well, to be honest, I think it's actually a bigger achievement that someone like Force India at the time was probably outperforming really their car to do whatever it was they were doing. Alonso in a Ferrari is there to win championships, and he failed.
Okay. I would say
just to make the argument that but he came third in Singapore, that's a great achievement. Well, no, it's not actually. If you're not winning, then it's not a great achievement. Just saying.
Is that his fault though, or is that the team's fault?
Well, he's the driver.
They're the team.
You can, but you can be the best driver in the world, but if you don't,
I mean, look at Bottas.
You've got
same thing. You mean you can have the best car in the best team at the top of your powers, but it's ultimately down to you to get the good result. And using that same argument, Alonso failed at Ferrari.
I daren't make a comment, I'll get in trouble.
I feel as if there's a horde of fans, Leicester, who have either switched off or written an angry comment somewhere telling you how you're wrong, or that I'm wrong. Because
please get in touch. That's you don't have to agree with us. It's not an agreement type of show where we all jump on and go, oh yes, and yes, I also like that, and yes, that is also interesting. Correct. No, we like a bit of discussion and debate, etc. Here on this show. To have a quick look at the calendar, then I was briefly looking at it a moment ago, but after this weekend, after the Australian Grand Prix, 21 races this year, and they didn't all fit on my chart, etc. But there, after this weekend, there's the Australian Grand Prix, of course. Then there's the second round at Bahrain in 2 weeks' time, where apparently every single championship on the planet will be racing that particular weekend. Or is it in 3 weeks? 2 weeks. Bahrain. End of March. Brexit weekend. Shh, don't mention it. I got away with it.
God, don't go there. Don't go there. I'll get in even more trouble if we go there.
Chinese Grand Prix on my birthday, day before my birthday.
1000th Grand Prix.
Yay. Which is also how old I am.
1,000, yes. Yes,
sometimes. Azerbaijan, Spanish Grand Prix, Monaco, Canada is pretty consistent, and I think hats off. It's worth saying hats off to FOM and previously Bernie Ecclestone for putting a regular calendar together so consistently. And it's unusual now to get a Formula One race that isn't 2 weeks apart, so it's kind of rare that, I mean, yes, we've got the summer break, we did have the summer break all throughout August, but then we've got the Hungarian Grand Prix in August, so that summer break where everyone sort of downs tools seems to be getting shorter and shorter as the
I think it's still 4 weeks. It's just like a week before the end of July to the week before the end of August, so it still works out, just a little bit shifted. You have to sort of credit when you compare how Formula One used to be. If you look at a calendar, go back on Wikipedia, look at a calendar from like 1997 or 90, whenever, in the, ages ago. F1 races were really, really spread out. You get one race in like March, maybe another race in March, and then nothing. You often, it wouldn't be unusual to have 4 weeks. Which is considered now a holiday in F1, a mid-season holiday. It wouldn't be unusual back then to get 4-week breaks in Formula One. So, yeah. I do know my most good stat about that is, I think it was 1960. I think it was the start of the Formula One season was on January the 1st. For various reasons. They're in South Africa, obviously, but it was. I
can see that happening again. To be honest.
January 1st.
I can definitely see a scenario like that, where maybe they're getting a bit fed up with Formula E's winter dominance, and they just think, you know what, we're Formula One, we can do whatever we want, and if we want to go to racing, wherever, South Africa or somewhere else, perhaps, then on January the 1st, then why the hell not? Because, there'll be nothing else on, really, only Formula E, but whatever. Nothing else on, will corner the entire motorsport market on the planet. Seems like a really good idea, to be honest, because TV viewership's almost halved in the last 10 years across the world in Formula One, mostly through it going behind a paywall. To have a race on or around Christmas time seems like a really obvious thing to do.
Well, I could see it being a bit of an issue for logistics, but
it's just people and money. F1 doesn't care about that.
I mean, if you want to bring up that argument, Lester, my response will be make it a non-championship race and bring back a one-off random non-championship race in the winter so that we don't forget about it, and make it free to air.
I mean, is that not essentially what Race of Champions is doing, really? I know they're more like November time, but... I
mean, yes, actually, I will agree with you on that point. Race of Champions does fill that role, but no one watches Race of Champions outside of motorsports.
I watch Race of Champions.
Outside of motorsport. As someone who's covered it for the last 5 years, I perfectly know. But yeah, Race of Champions either needs better support, better F1 drivers, or if you are going to bring on Leicester's idea, make a quite well-promoted non-official F1 race sometime in January. I don't know.
Okay. Well, do you think maybe, Charlie, I'm on to something about having a Christmas winter style event? Let's call it an event, if not a full.
I don't know. I must admit, I was actually quite skeptical of Formula E being a winter series, and now it fills such a massive void in my motorsport life that I couldn't imagine not having it across the winter. So I don't know. I can't fathom it. I can't picture it, but I'm sure it would, if it happened, I'm sure it would be a massive success.
They could, I suppose, kill two birds with one stone, Formula One. Not that they're big on cost cutting, but they could extend the testing period and make that more of an event.
Yeah, testing is dare I say, testing is incredibly boring at the moment. So there's plenty they could do with that. They're already all there. They're already on track. So yeah, do something with that.
Interesting. Let us know your thoughts if you tuned in and listening live. Then we'd love to know if you disagree with my ludicrous theory that F1 should go back to having an event or race or something on January 1st or thereabouts, even if it's not in South Africa, then where would you suggest maybe? It's working pretty well, that idea, for Formula E right now over the winter. So yeah, why not?
I think they could do more events over the winter, personally, because Formula E starts in November, then doesn't have its second round until January. They'd miss out most of December. I think Formula E should have more rounds in the winter, but that's my thoughts.
Let us know. Anyway, if you tuned in, if you tuned in live to us, incidentally, if you're not tuned in live, do not worry, because on Monday Motorsport, we like to make ourselves more accessible than Sky Sports, for example, in that we are on Spotify. You can download the audio show of this on there. We're also streaming. When we do stream live, we stream on Twitch and YouTube as well, and most importantly on Facebook and Twitter as well, and I forget where else. Motorsport.radio, the website address, is the main place to go to for all your motorsport needs, I suppose, and also, Connor, some fantastic articles as well.
Indeed, we're regularly putting out Formula 1, Formula E articles, as well as a wide selection of bike racing. I know we have going on at the minute, thanks to our new bike team this year. So looking forward to that. Obviously, with the first round of the MotoGP we had this weekend.
Okay, yes, we certainly did. First round of MotoGP, and we will have a full debrief of everything that happened with our bike team on the Superbike Show this Thursday, live at 8, right here on Motorsport Radio, streaming right here, exactly. So yes, with that, I suppose, is there any other, I just want to mention as well, because Charlie, you mentioned it just before we came on air, and it was, I think, Sunday, when it marks the 2-year time since the legend John Surtees had passed away, incredibly, 2 years ago. I think it was Sunday. It was over the weekend, anyway. The 2-year marker point of when he left us. Incredible to think that a man champion on 2 and 4 wheels is still no longer with us, and it's already been 2 years since that happened.
Yeah, it's crazy. It was such a massive loss to the motorsport world when he sadly passed away. I know he was such a massive figure, not only for the records that he set, but just also for his general presence in motorsport. He is the definition of a legend. I know that word gets thrown around far too much, but it is very deservedly given to Mr. John Surtees. Yeah, certainly, and
2 years on. And we can never really forget, I suppose.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, we go on remembering, certainly, with fondness. And I was lucky enough to actually interview him 2016, I think. And it was the Mercedes-Benz World, and it was for a charity karting event, which was raising money for the air ambulance. And there was lots of very famous Formula E drivers there. Well, there was Lucas Di Grassi was there. So yeah, that's
all you ever need.
Just my memories of that event. And then John turned up, and he went round the little track there at Mercedes-Benz World down there at Brooklands. He went round in his old Ferrari, not his old Ferrari, one of his old cars. And there was the F1 safety car there, the Mercedes safety car. It was amazing thing. I'll try and dig out the video and put that on Twitter at M Sport Radio. Anyway, I digress. Because we are now going to do some predictions, yes, for the weekend and also the championship as well. Connor Jackson, this is something that Charlie, I didn't actually tell you that I was going to do this, but we're doing it. Thank you very much. That's okay, don't worry. So this weekend then, and I didn't really say that put Albon in as my third, and Raikkonen as my second, and Stroll as my first one. That was just me messing about. But I will get the predictions for the Australian Grand Prix from Charlie Andrews. Who are you going to say for the podium, starting in order? Third place.
Well, there's obviously a dream scenario and a reality scenario. I would absolutely love to see Leclerc on that podium in his first race. I think it could happen. I want it to happen. A lot of people want it to happen. So, yeah, he's got to be my third place.
Okay, second?
I'm torn. I'm torn between first and second. I think I'm going to have to put Hamilton there.
Okay, Hamilton hater.
Yeah.
And first place, I'm guessing Sebastian
Vettel. Yeah, as much as I hate to believe testing, there's got to be something there. There's got to be something there, and they smashed the most amount of laps, I think, of any team across testing, and that's got to be worth a lot. So yeah, I'm putting Vettel as my numero uno.
Okay, thank you for that. Connor, your top three this weekend in the first round of Formula One at the Australian Grand Prix. Go.
Charlie kind of took what I was predicting anyway. So no, you're fine, Charlie. I won't be boring and pick the same thing, in which case I'll be slightly radical, let's say. I mean, I will be radical for you, Lester. I will say I believe Verstappen has enough
good shout.
Gel with the team now, and obviously he's going to be the number one coming into this year. Honda themselves haven't had any problems in the long run. Any problems have been with the car and Gasly, mostly in testing. So I'm going to say third place to Verstappen.
Interesting.
I will also swap it around from what Charlie said, and I'll say that although Vettel's been very hyped, let's say, coming into this season with his spectacular testing times, the race may prove to be different, and I wouldn't be surprised if Mercedes are holding something back. So let's say Vettel for P2 and Hamilton for the race victory.
It's not uncommon, isn't it, for Mercedes to hold a little something back until the race day. So yeah, good shout.
Okay, and my own predictions, I will say. I will say in third place. I'm typing and thinking and talking at the same time. It's not going to end well at all. In third place this weekend will be Valtteri Bottas.
Okay.
Ooh.
Definitely. It was a toss-up between him and Danny Ricciardo.
Ooh, controversial.
Are you really predicting Daniel to be that impressive in the Renault, or are you predicting some massive first corner pile-up?
Yeah, good shout.
I think a lot of people are presuming that Australia and Albert Park and the Melbourne race is like any ordinary race, and every single year it amuses me just how little the outcome of the race matches with what people expect from pre-season, because it's a street race and people are learning their systems and their cars and their strategies and their dynamicisms within the synergies. Is it like a Formula One word? So people are still learning by the time they get to Australia. People are not always, and we've seen this year in, year out almost. So what happened in testing sometimes has absolutely no bearing to the outcome of the Australian Grand Prix, which is actually why I'm going to say Ricciardo will be second in the race in the Renault. You laugh.
Oh, we're going to be laughing come Monday.
But I remember telling you that Manuel Maldonado was going to win a race this time last year in Formula 3, and you laughed then, and he did win a race. More than one, I think.
It was just one, but you did prove your point, Lester. You did prove your point.
See, everyone laughs, and then anyway. But you might see this part of the show being replayed back over and over and over again if I happen to be right. First place will be Lewis Hamilton, of course, and as to why there's no Ferraris, I don't know. There'll probably be some incident or some sort of pit stop craziness. I don't even know if it'll rain on the day. I don't know. But there are our predictions. Bottas in third. It's amazing how you guys have already written off Bottas. Interesting.
Correct.
Yeah,
Interesting.
correct. Unfortunately, yeah.
He might be, doing an Alan Partridge bouncing back style, and he might actually take it to Hamilton in a way that he hasn't.
Yeah, I would love him to. I would love him to prove me wrong, but unfortunately, I just can't see it happening.
Okay.
I mean, he does kind of have to bounce back and attack Hamilton this year, let's say. So we'll see.
Okay, and predictions for the champion of 2019, Charlie.
Okay, Lester, if you're going to be controversial, then so am I. Charles Leclerc.
I think you're just saying that to be. I mean, you're not putting money on that, are you? Jeez. Okay.
Do you know what though? Do you know what? I really do have a strong feeling that he's gonna be good. I really do.
There's a big difference between being good and being the champion in your first season at Ferrari.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it.
Okay, fair enough. All right, Connor.
I'll play the safe bet, Vettel.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Not that safe. I don't know if it's that
chosen
safe.
Hamilton yet. Hamilton haters. I don't even know, to be honest.
I swear to God, if you pick anyone outside of the top 3 teams.
The 2019 Formula One World Champion will be Sebastian Vettel.
You can't just copy my answer.
I literally can, and I did. It wasn't copying you, though. I mean, he is one of the greatest of all time in Formula One, Sebastian Vettel. Yes, he is.
So no one's predicted Hamilton. Okay, this is going to go great.
Well, if we're all wrong, we're all wrong together.
Exactly, we're going down in flames together.
Ferrari flames.
Steve Andrews has been in touch, and going back to the calendar debate that we were having a short while ago, or at least that I was floating around, saying that a race in January in Finland on ice tyres would be good. Something Steve Andrews says.
Yes.
Is that not just boys and their toys? That's not a championship race.
Race of Champions, Finland on the ice.
Wow.
I want that.
Yeah, and I would love it if there were no Finnish drivers involved. No Bottas, no Raikkonen. I would love that.
That's so rude.
I would love that immensely. Tom Cairns been back in touch. He's still tuned in. Thank you, Tom.
You make it sound as if as if it shouldn't be.
I'm constantly amazed that people have nothing better to do on a weekday evening than to tune into.
We're still here
to our ramblings.
Oh God, Lester, this is your job.
He says contributes the enormous point that about Formula E being a winter series. If Formula E was to do that, Formula One, I think, going back to maybe what you said, Charlie, maybe have more winter races. Formula One would need to start later at around April and end in October like it used to. He says, I have many reasons for this, but I would rather hear from us guys first. I think we gave an answer to that earlier. I'm not sure. And Steve Andrews back in touch, and he corrects me when I was mentioning about John Surtees, and it was for the Surtees Foundation for his son. Yeah, the Henry Surtees
for Henry,
Foundation. Of course. James Williams been on, and hello, good evening, James. Streamer in his own right, and Welsh wonder of the sim racing variety, I'm told, and also named Williams. So and he does like Williams because he is named Williams. I do know James.
Anyway. So you can't speak for people, Lester.
I'm literally doing it now. James says Leclerc is a force for good, I presume he was going to carry on saying.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
He also chips in with by saying Robert Kubica to be Formula One World Drivers Champion according to 90% of Poland. Ha ha. Yeah, I think I've got a couple of questions from Poland to answer on the internet anyway. And Regarding predictions, Tom Cairns says Hamilton to be world champion for his choice. Over the course of the season, he will be the most consistent, even on days where he is not as such a good a driver. I think he was going to go on to say. But yeah, those are our predictions. Charlie reckons Vettel will win the race this weekend. Connor thinks Hamilton will win the race this weekend, and I think Hamilton will win the race this weekend. And nobody thinks he will be champion, though. That's don't know. Are we all mad? Maybe. Who knows?
Probably. Just to quickly answer Tom's point when he said the season starting in April, I do see reasons why that would help, but logistics-wise, you do have to have enough space between each of the rounds in order for teams to fly out, because it does create a lot of money and havoc when teams are going back and forth. I do think the fact they go so quickly between rounds over Asia, over such large distances, are an issue. Back-to-back weekends in Europe, I think, would be a lot better than what they have at the minute. But starting in April is definitely going to cause havoc unless you want to have a season that goes into December.
Well, I think we've discussed that wouldn't be necessarily a terrible thing. But yeah, who knows what will happen? Who knows? Maybe you know what will happen. Maybe you're tuned in right now listening to us, maybe live. What's the guy's name with the thing with the moustache? I forgot his name.
What?
F1.
For what?
The F1 guy.
The Liberty Media guy.
Yeah, I forgot his name anyway. Him.
Oh. Carey.
Yeah, Chase Carey. Yeah,
Chase.
that one. Anyway, joke completely ruined. Moving on. So yeah, that was our predictions for Formula One this weekend, and yeah, that's. I think have we pretty much covered everything that we was going to talk about. Now, are I forgetting anything in particular?
I'm sure Phil will point you out to World Rally again.
He's welcome to come on and talk about World Rally, as is Vince as well, the lesser spotted Vince Petit, who's apparently never ever been spotted in real life. So this is what. So
I do remember a few TCF journalists did rumour to say they once met him at a circuit, but they were very few and far between, those guys.
There's been more sightings of Bigfoot,
probably
verified sightings of Bigfoot than there has of the checkered flag editor-in-chief. But yeah,
we love him though. We love him.
We do certainly, and you're more than welcome to come on. Especially, by the way, if you are a journalist, maybe or you're a budding journalist who is managing a blog at the moment, perhaps, or looking to get into journalism, then get in touch. We are definitely looking for writers at the moment. Charlie?
No, I was just going to say, not something that we've necessarily forgotten, but just something I wanted to quickly draw attention to in just jumping back slightly to Formula E. Apologies for continuity issues.
No, you're fine.
We had, obviously, it was Mortara's first win, but I just wanted to point out that with Susie Wolff at the helm, she is only the second female team principal to win an FIA race, the first female team principal to win a top flight FIA race. And I just think, I'm just thrilled. I'm thrilled she's doing so well, and we've got so many more women coming up through the ranks, and I cannot wait to see what they do. So just wanted to big it up for the girls out there.
Yeah, sometimes we, I don't know, I mean, from my point of view, yes, I think it was mentioned at some point, but I mean, yeah, I mean, considering that, I personally, I mean, I struggle to say, I mean, I'm not a woman. So I'm not an expert on these matters, but I am informed that there is still a lot of work to do, and in getting
absolutely.
a certain degree of equality, etc. In terms of making motorsport, I'd say, more accessible. Maybe not. It might not ever be a 50-50 representative split, which mirrors society, because there's 80% of people who like motorsport are all men, and that happens naturally.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. I think you could do an entire episode just on this one issue, and I know I have absolutely got myself in trouble before for having very strong views on this.
You're on the right show.
I know, I quite often get myself in trouble for my views, but no, I just think they're more and more in the headlines. They're harder and harder to miss nowadays, and that's only ever going to be positive for the world of motorsport. You know, it may be decades before we see a female F1 world champion. We may never see a female F1 world champion, but we've got women. They're there. They're successful. They're doing well, and for me, it's a fantastic direction to be heading in. So yeah. Just wanted to point it out.
It's already been pointed out many times on Motorsport Radio. Yeah, we spoke to Jamie Chadwick,
fantastic.
We were actually on site. I was there filming, and I interviewed her literally as she stepped off the podium after her first ever victory at Brands Hatch last year.
Fantastic.
And also, we were also on site at Alton Park last year at British GT to witness Flick Haig as well take the first ever pole position for a female driver in British GT3, and also at Donington as well to see her crowned champion and become only the second female British GT champion driver and the first in GT3 after Jamie Chadwick herself a few years hence. So we're in full support, and keep it up from yours and all that general support and encouragement. So that is it, really, I suppose, for our first show on Monday Motorsport of 2019. Thank you very much to everyone who has stuck with us, tuned in, and kept on going for the full almost 2 hours. That's pretty impressive, good going stuff, I would say. Thank you very much, Charlie Andrews, for being on the show tonight and making your Motorsport Radio debut. Hopefully we've not scared you and pressured you into not coming again.
God no.
God
no, you will see me again, don't worry.
That is good. Hello to Michael Skeet, who's just joined us a little bit late, just as we're going off. But you can tune in to us maybe on the Superbike show this weekend, this Thursday night, where our Superbike team of experts and myself will be talking about bikes, of all things. I know, it's incredible. Thank you very much, Connor Jackson, for coming on the first Monday Motorsport show. A newly revamped Monday Motorsport show. We've been doing this for 2 years, and I'm only now finally getting comfortable with doing it, I think. It's always nerve-wracking, but thank you anyway for being part of the first show. Go back to motorsport.radio and listen back to any of the shows that we've done, and we'd love to see you again. Should we do it again next week?
If you want, Lester.
We'll try and do it again next week. Thank you. And good night.
Monday Motorsport with Lester Forbes on Motorsport Radio.
Hi, it's Seb Ogier.
This is Manuel Maldonado.
Hi, I'm Ash Sutton.
Hi, I'm Michael O'Brien, and this is Motorsport Radio.